Part 3, Sister Agnes stopped only a few feet from the doorway. Sarah could hear every heartbeat pounding inside her chest. The tiny candle she had extinguished moments earlier still filled the tunnel with the faint smell of smoke. One careless breath would be enough to betray her. The Mother Superior stood silently. She listened. The chamber behind her had become so quiet that even the crackling of a single lantern seemed deafening. Finally, Sister Agnes reached forward, not toward the tunnel, toward the heavy wooden door. She slowly pushed it closed. The lock clicked. Only then did Sarah dare breathe again. She remained hidden until every voice faded into silence. Hours seemed to pass before she carefully retreated through the narrow passage and emerged into the freezing night air. The stars above looked brighter than ever, yet Sarah felt as though the world had become darker. Ruth was alive, but she was not free. Neither were the other women. Whatever happened beneath St. Bridget's convent had been concealed for years behind prayers, charity, and respectable appearances. The following evening, Sarah returned to the hidden tunnel carrying food, fresh water, and one thing more valuable than either: hope. This time she waited until the convent bells announced midnight. Carefully lifting the old latch, she slipped inside. The underground chamber was quieter than before. Most of the women slept. Only Ruth remained awake, gently rocking her child beside a dim lantern. Sarah stepped from the shadows. For one long moment, neither sister moved. Then Ruth's eyes widened. "Sarah?" The whisper sounded almost unreal. The two embraced tightly, both struggling to keep from crying aloud. "I thought you were dead," Sarah whispered. "So did I." Ruth kissed Sarah's forehead before looking nervously toward the locked corridor. "You should not be here. What is this place?" Ruth lowered her eyes. "It began as a refuge." Sarah frowned. Years earlier, Ruth explained, several pregnant enslaved women had secretly been brought to the convent after suffering terrible abuse on nearby plantations. Some arrived beaten. Others had nowhere else to survive. The sisters hid them from violent overseers and cared for them through childbirth. For a time, the underground rooms had truly offered safety. But everything changed after the previous Mother Superior died. Sister Agnes took control. Donations from wealthy plantation owners had begun to disappear. The convent struggled with debts. Repairs became impossible. Food grew scarce. Then several influential landowners offered generous financial support. Nothing was free. "They wanted healthy children," Ruth whispered. "They called it charity." Sarah stared in disbelief. Ruth continued. "Women judged likely to give birth were quietly transferred to the convent. Some believed they were finally safe. Instead, they found themselves trapped by fear. No iron chains bound them. The prison was something more powerful. The women were told that if they fled, their families would be sold apart. If they resisted, nearby plantations would refuse shelter forever. If they remained obedient, they and their children would survive. Most believed they had no choice. Some children stayed temporarily within the convent orphanage. Others quietly disappeared into the legal slave markets through carefully arranged transactions handled by powerful plantation owners. Not openly by the convent itself, but by those who exploited its secrecy for profit. Sarah felt sick. The stone walls around them suddenly seemed colder. Why doesn't anyone tell the truth? Ruth looked toward her sleeping child. Because everyone fears someone. Before Sarah could answer, footsteps echoed through the corridor. Both sisters froze. A young novice entered carrying blankets. Unlike Sister Agnes, she appeared barely 20 years old. Her frightened expression changed the moment she saw Sarah. Instead of shouting, she quietly closed the door behind her. I wondered when someone would come. Sarah looked at her cautiously. You knew? The young woman nodded. My name is Sister Catherine. Tears filled her eyes. I entered the convent believing we served God. She looked around the chamber. By the time I understood what had become of this place, leaving meant exposing everyone here to even greater danger. She reached beneath her robe. From inside, she removed several folded papers. They're copies. Sarah unfolded them. Ledgers, names, dates, plantation owners, payments, birth records, transfers of children into the custody of wealthy families and traders. The documents did not describe a secret breeding program as rumor claimed. Instead, they revealed a web of corruption in which vulnerable enslaved women seeking refuge were exploited, while powerful men enriched themselves through the buying and selling of human lives. Some sisters had resisted. Others had remained silent. A few had convinced themselves they were protecting the women from even worse plantations. Silence had become its own prison. We need these outside, Sister Catherine whispered, before Sister Agnes burns everything. Just then, the convent bell rang once. Then again, not for prayer, for alarm. Someone had discovered the tunnel entrance. Voices echoed above. Lantern light flickered down the staircase. They know, Ruth whispered. They've found us. Within seconds, the underground chamber erupted into panic. Mothers gathered their children. Infants began crying. Sarah clutched the papers tightly beneath her shawl. Sister Catherine pointed toward a narrow drainage passage almost hidden behind broken barrels. It leads to the creek. It's too small. For adults, yes. Sarah looked toward Ruth. I won't leave without you. Ruth gently placed her daughter into Sarah's arms. You leave with her. No, you must. Heavy footsteps thundered closer. The first door burst open. Men carrying lanterns entered the outer corridor. Sister Agnes followed calmly behind them. Her face showed neither anger nor fear, only exhaustion. She looked directly at Sarah. So, her voice remained steady. You found the truth. Sarah stood between the Mother Superior and the women. The whole town will know. Sister Agnes slowly shook her head. The town already knows enough. Silence filled the chamber. What do you mean? They donate. The words landed like stones. They approve. They ask no questions. They prefer not to see. She looked toward the sleeping children. They built this world long before I arrived, Sarah answered firmly, and you chose to keep it alive. For the first time, Sister Agnes's composure cracked. Tears gathered in her eyes. I convinced myself survival required compromise. She looked around the underground room. Each year it became easier to remain silent. Outside, more voices approached. Sister Catherine stepped beside Sarah. No more. The young nun pulled a lantern from its hook and smashed it against the ledger shelves. Flames erupted instantly. Fire raced across old paper. Smoke filled the chamber. The guards stumbled backward. Women rushed toward the tunnel as confusion spread through the underground halls. Sarah, carrying Ruth's daughter beneath her cloak, crawled through the narrow drainage passage, exactly as Sister Catherine had described. Cold water soaked her clothes. Behind her echoed shouting, collapsing beams, and the frantic ringing of church bells. She emerged beside the frozen creek just before dawn. Hours later, smoke still rose above St. Bridget's Convent. The fire destroyed much of the hidden archive, but not everything. Sarah still carried the copied ledgers beneath her clothing. Those pages eventually reached people willing to investigate the powerful network that had protected itself through wealth, influence, and fear. Some plantation owners faced public disgrace. Several officials quietly resigned. Sister Agnes disappeared before formal questioning could begin. No verified record ever confirmed where she spent the rest of her life. Some believed she died in another convent under a different name. Others claimed she wandered alone until her final days, burdened by the choices she could never undo. Ruth and several other women escaped during the confusion that followed the fire. Not every family was reunited. Not every child was found. Some names vanished forever into the records of slavery, where countless stories remain incomplete. Years later, the ruins of St. Bridget's stood empty. Travelers still avoided the old hill after sunset. Children whispered that prayers could still be heard beneath the broken stones. Others claimed they heard mothers singing lullabies that echoed through abandoned tunnels. Whether those sounds belonged to memory or imagination, no one could say. History often remembers towering churches, respected leaders, and celebrated institutions. Far less often does it remember the frightened voices hidden beneath them. The greatest tragedies are not always created by monsters. Sometimes they endure because ordinary people choose silence over truth, comfort over conscience, and reputation over justice. And perhaps the most haunting question left behind is not whether darkness can hide behind sacred walls, but how many people looked directly at it, lowered their eyes, and walked away.